Hey guys, my name is Joshua. I am doing book reviews. We are starting off with our incremental, spoiler included review of Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 1. Just to go through it, this is a 440-page book. This is by Mr. Matt Dinniman. This is part of a multi-book series, so there will be more where this comes from. I will be breaking each review into 20% increments, so I'll be reviewing 1/5 of it first, 2/5 of the next, 3/5 of it as I go, so as not to cloud myself to an amazing conclusion that makes me give a book a 5-star review when it's really a 2-star book the entire way through. And just to give you a quick overview of the book so far, so it starts off on our Earth. This guy, main character of Dungeon Crawler Carl, the Dungeon Crawler that we're going to be kicking it with, he basically is just a normal guy. Goes outside with his cat one morning. Every building on Earth, everything with a ceiling above it gets crushed, destroys every human life form inside of it. What ends up happening then is you get a message in your head that says, hey, you're about to enter a video game, more or less. You can choose to either stay on your surface of your world and survive with the very limited resources that we've left you with, or enter the dungeon, and if you win, you get to go free, or if you win the entire game, you get to rule the world. So, those are your options. What are you going to do with them, right? So, of course, his name is Dungeon Crawler Carl, so he chooses to go into the dungeon. He gets put into this interesting situation where anybody who's ever played a RPG video game, or anything like a Skyrim or like a Fallout, where you get to put skill points in and kind of explore different trees, that's the situation that he finds himself in, right? So he's just a normal guy, and because of that, he's got these stat points, and as he goes through and levels up, he's able to add stats to that. He's able to get items that increase his strength and things like that. So really cool premise of the book. Let's go ahead and start getting into the review. So first 20%, we get introduced to the characters, right? We got my boy Carl, normal guy. Looks like he used to be in the Coast Guard, something like that, one of the reserve sections of it, so he's in pretty good shape. They describe him as like a linebacker type, not a lot of combat experience, it feels like, but enough to get by, right? He's a massive human, so he's like a linebacker build, comes from like a long line of giant humans, and so you really give us a good basis for what, a warrior build would be in a Skyrim like video game. That's how I describe it. He's like, in my head, he's a human, but he's built like an orc, right? That's how I'm reading it. Major plot points so far: he enters the dungeon, he gets all the rules, he fights 3 goblins, puts them on ice. Oh my god. So there's these goblins, got this like John Deere giant bed tractor with a, rolling pin on it with spikes and stuff, just a murder machine. He outruns it. One goblin runs up on him, puts him on ice, easy, snuffs him out. Second one comes up on him, handles that, puts him on the ground. Other one's running up, guy at the tutorial guild, Mordecai, seems like he'll be an important character later on, isn't supposed to let him in, lets him in, right? So him, his cat, which is another main character, her name's Princess Donut, it's a name, but originally just a cat. Once they all go into this tutorial hall, they have gotten what these things are like mystery boxes. You might know them as like the thing that ruined Call of Duty, right? But they open them, which gives them certain items. One of the items is like this legendary pet thing, which he gives to Princess Donut. Turns her from a normal cat into a super intelligent, well-articulated cat who is more or less just an asshole. They play into that pretty heavy, of like how you would expect a cat to act. Anyone who's ever owned a cat gets it. But then they have like this cute vulnerable moment, become friends. Mordecai lays down the rules for him. Hey, 18 floors to this thing. Once you get to floor 10 or 11, that's where I got off. I was once a dungeon crawler myself. My world has been destroyed, blah, blah, blah. And kind of frames it like this is just like, once again, bad TV, right? So like your whole point here is to be entertaining. Think of it like a Hunger Games style event, but in a much cooler video gamey style situation going on, right? When it comes to plot points, after that, they get into it with a llama that spits lava out of its mouth. Honestly, that might have been where I got it. I might have got out of that point because, say it's as big as a horse and spitting lava loogies at you, probably would catch me slipping. Then again, Princess Donut does hit it with some rockets out of her eyes, which is sick, because a magic system exists in this world, much like once again, like a Skyrim, where you can cast spells based on mana. Anybody's ever played these type of video games, just I feel like I'm picking up on it quicker because of that. If you're new to that kind of situation, you might run into some issues with that. They find some bugs, kill them. That would for sure smoke me. Terrified of bugs. These giant loaf of bread sized bugs, brother, tag me out. I'm not cut out for this dungeon stuff. They get to what is effectively like a sleep in McDonald's. They get to order food. They're at a safe spot. That's the first 20% of the book. They get to a safe spot where Carl feels like he can effectively recover, sleep, rest until it's time to move on to the next level, and farm XP. So, hey, these are all good decisions in my opinion. I think he has a good head on his shoulders. Obviously, Princess Donut has a much higher intelligence stat than him after this boost, so she's a smart one, but she's a cat. Doesn't understand like the nuances of things, which I think is important. I enjoy that they frame it in a way where he is less raw intelligence than her, but she does not know how to interact with situations the same way he would. Kind of further along that, getting more into character decisions, I think he makes strong decisions. I don't know that he's making decisions I would not make in those moments, you know. Everything from entering the dungeon immediately to, you know, putting these goblins on ice to, you know, killing these roaches, this llama. Even his decision in the beginning where he's like, I want to split up with Princess Donut, who's kind of just being a dick to me. I think that that's valid given the situation it kind of describes where, you know, it's really his ex-girlfriend's cat, his ex-girlfriend cheated on him, you know, all these things have developed. But I do enjoy the character development that it immediately gives of Princess Donut, showing vulnerability and being like, hey, you know, it's like I've been asleep my whole life. I feel like I just got woken up, you know, this is a very difficult thing for me to deal with, so I do want to stay with you. I want us to be safe, I want us to work together. I enjoy that. Mordecai, you know, kind of describes him as like this interesting individual who obviously was a dungeon crawler before, got to a pretty high level, thinks that's impossible to beat, which of course I assume later on will be Carl overcoming that idea against Mordecai's advice, and Mordecai even kind of bending the rules to help Carl at a certain point. You know, not supposed to be opening the guild hall unless all enemies are defeated in the area, and then following up with kind of Carl convincing him to open it anyway because Princess Donut's already walked in. I think that kind of shows that he's for our characters. He wants to help the people of this world, which kind of like, you know, establishes a good connection to him so far. Any of the foreshadowing things, so I mean there's a lot of alluding to like stronger enemies down the line. Obviously as the floors increase in difficulty, he will have to, you know, rise to the challenge through level ups, through power ups, through allocation of skill points. I really like this idea of like on level 3 of the dungeon he gets to choose a new species if he wants to. So imagine the situation where, you know, am I willing to give up my humanity, the thing that makes me human, literally my humanness, in order to gain an advantage in this dungeon, in order to preserve myself and my life and my ability to continue fighting, and continue leveling up and getting to a point where even though I'm no longer human, can never be human again, where I get to live. You know, I think that's a very interesting situation to find yourself in. And I don't know if he'll get an opportunity to change back at any point, nothing like that. But, you know, if it's me personally, I'm taking a skill boost. You know, put me on. Give me whatever benefits that I need in order to survive this, but I understand where it might be a real issue for him later on. I'm looking forward to that character development, and as it goes, man, I'm enjoying this book so far. You know, I think it's living up a little bit to the hype. You know, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, only 80 pages in, but I'm looking forward to getting through this one. Okay, back with the second part of my review. Here, page 203, about 46% of the way through the book. Getting a break from work currently, so just gonna try and bang this out in the hallway so I can get back and read a little bit more during the dead time. Really like how the book's developing. Things I thought were interesting and noteworthy. Forgot to mention Princess Donut using disguise. Family's ashes as a letterbox. Good bit. I enjoyed that bit. Let me see. Let me pull this up, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. The things I've enjoyed up until this point, how they handled the goblin. Big fan of that. I like how the goblin fight, Princess Donut kind of drops that, like, oh, there are so many kids in there, too thing. I will say that I feel like Carl maybe got past that a little quick. Maybe he, like, accepted the idea of killing kids pretty quickly, but, you know, these things happen. The first boss fight, obviously being someone from our world, was interesting. I thought that was a good fight, someone who didn't want to be there. Ooh, the goblins' motivation being to get their kids to like a safer portion, really humanizing all the different parts of the game and how everybody's really a victim of the system. And yeah, looks like they're about to go into their first big boss fight. They just killed Lizard Guy, you know, mid to high diff. So hopefully they get these elderly people down to the next level, you know. Obviously they do because he lives, so we'll see. All right, and we're back with the spoiler portion of this. We'll say I'm at 55% right now, which is, you know, less than 20% we talked about. But if I get a chance to read a work tonight, I want to be able to just read for a little while, not have to worry about, you know, walking off making a review or anything like that. So the main plot point is that they beat the first Burrow boss. Super sick. Killer fight. It isn't sick in the way of like you get with like a Red Rising or like a Way of Kings where like, you know, the hero's pulling off just never before seen type of action and combat and just outskilling them. It's very much so just like a normal person trying to make a strategy that kind of cheeses the boss. Really realistic for a video game. There's ever just like a boss that you can't get past yourself, so you kind of look for like these weird ways you can handle it. He cheeses another boss earlier, like the Goblin King or leader or whatever, where he basically just rolls a bomb in, nukes their entire, you know, child care and elderly care system along with the boss. But no, I thought there was an interesting way for the underdogs to win without taking many losses. I appreciated that. I thought that was pretty well done. This whole bit where Carl is like protecting the elderly now, love that, right? Goes from killing the goblin babies, feeling kind of bad about that, to protecting the elderly. I think that's a good character development step, you know? I think that it really goes a long way of establishing that, like, okay, you know, he at his core is trying to survive, but he's so human, he still wants to do the right thing. I appreciate that in a character. You know, they get pulled on a talk show. Princess Donut goes crazy on the main stage. Absolutely has them eaten out of her paws on this interview. And I love that his catchphrase is "God damn it, Donut." I think that's such a good bit. The fact that he said it so often because she keeps putting him in sticky situations. And I love how Princess Donut really plays it as if she is, you know, Earth royalty, and, you know, these aliens are believing whatever she tells them, right? Really interesting description of the talk show host, but, you know, I can take it or leave it. You can describe an alien however you want to me, and I really won't care. Definitely distinct, something I would remember. Especially with like I mean, if you guys read the book, you guys already know what time it is. You know, she's definitely got, she's got the assets that would make it easy to recognize this character later on in the story. Carl being able to recognize that Princess Donut is just hamming it up, just loves the attention, and that is going to be a problem later on, big. All right, I love when we add in these character flaws early on that you know we're going to play a big role in the story as it comes on, or be like a big pivot point for a character's relationship with another character. I really enjoy when we lay that early. And I also enjoy the like little sparks of like humanity that Carl's having. I know I talked about how I kind of wanted him to react more after the goblin baby thing, but I'm really seeing the parts of him now where he'll have like a normal experience, bites into an apple, has a flashback of a dead body. You know, anybody who's ever been through like very traumatic experiences like that knows that they kind of pop in and out randomly. And so I kind of appreciate how human it is that even though he's going through this, you know, being placed into like almost a Hunger Games-esque survival situation, he still is going through all of the normal human reactions that I would expect a person to have at this point. So I think that's fair. I'm gonna hopefully hope for a slow night at work. I hope I can lock in, get some more of this book done, and I'll be seeing you guys for the next part. And we're back for the fourth part. This is the spoiler version. I'm currently on page 353. So right now it looks like we're about 80% of the way through the book. Oof, man, I kind of overread that. And some things I definitely want to touch on. So big developments that have happened that stuck out to me. One, the fact that Beatrice was going to give up Princess Donut, and that Carl doesn't bring it up because Princess Donut has like this lack of understanding that B is dead. Oh my god, that is that's big, you know. I feel like that's like something that I feel like might come up again later on in the books, you know, might be like a very emotional, angry point. That's why I imagine this happening. If it doesn't come up, it does a really good job of being like, oh, Carl is just like a pretty good guy, he doesn't want to bring up any information that would hurt unnecessarily. Kind of a fan of that. So either way it goes, I feel like it'll have a good payoff eventually. oh man, when they're fighting the Krakarin, right? This like crazy fight scene where the boss comes to them, they're caught completely off guard, right? And they're in this very flammable place. It's gonna be a big explosion, and Carl's already like at a point where, you know, he's probably not gonna last this explosion, right? So he like says his goodbyes to Princess Donut. She's begging him not to, and he curls around her. Oh, brother. Good emotional beats of the story. I'm a big fan of these emotional beats. I think that they are doing a really good job of keeping me like invested in Carl as our hero, as our like de facto protagonist of like, oh, even though he, you know, is maybe going to die, you know, maybe he's not able to protect Princess Donut as much as he wants to, he's still willing to use his body. It's just that extra layer for her, just, and how fast and how well he accepts death. I mean, you gotta root for it. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of how that played out. Him surviving because of this ongoing foot fetish bit. Look, foot fetish bit isn't my favorite bit of all time. No, right? Like, it's definitely weird, right? But is it a good bit? I see the merit of it. I see that they keep coming back to it. They're making a plot relevant, which is interesting. You know, I don't hate it as much as I could. They meet their basically direct supervisor, who's their PR manager, 2-foot fish lady, very antiquated like spacesuit type thing. Really, the author does a really good job describing these monsters and characters, so I can just picture them almost perfectly in my head at the time. And I think that is kudos to him, because some of these are just very out there creations for him. But finding out that like the stakes for her are as high as the stakes for him, and as high as the stakes for the goblins that he fights, and how everybody's just like these big pawns in this giant game. You know, really good representation of what I feel like a lot of people feel when it comes to like being in the billionaire rat race. You know, these billionaires are, you know, making a ton of money, and they get all this entertainment from us and all these things, and we barely make it by, we barely make it through, we have to take all these sacrifices to survive. So I definitely see where I'm getting the same vibes from this universe, and, you know, just the frustrations that Carl has with it based on that. So I like that portion of it. Once again, if you're looking for like big plot point, sit out for like big underlying themes, I don't have the mental capacity to process things like that. The other main thing is they get this like level 95 crazy monster that's trying to kill everybody in the group because this old demented guy tries to pee in the hallway. Good setup, you know, definitely something that I saw the pieces for falling into place before. You know, understood what was happening as soon as it did. You know, I think it was a good payoff overall. The way Yolanda dies, just dog behavior. Just you know, facing down something that's gonna obliterate you, and just, you know, not even flinching in it. You know, for a small character, I would say probably mentioned in 3 or 4 paragraphs of this book so far. I mean, you really get that emotional pull still from her death. I think that's impressive. Being able to write like a heroic stand, not as like some great underdog hero, but just like as a regular person. I'm a fan of how he's characterizing people. You know, I'm a big fan of that. Do I think that the fight against the monster was good? I think it was realistic. I like that they didn't get like a crazy XP boost from it, right? Because I think that would have upset the power scaling in my head a little bit, just if they like went up like 5, 6, 7 levels, you know, above the dungeon standard right now. That would probably throw off the rest of the book. The fact they didn't get XP because their plan worked so well, I like that. You know, I'm a fan of them staying at the same level, but obviously having outsmarted, you know, this incredibly dangerous beast. I like that they've added in where, you know, the dungeon mobs can use similar spells. I think that's going to be like a very important part in the future. I think that's interesting. The bit where he doesn't have pants still, that's just a good bit. Yeah, I can't help it. Just a solid bit. Big fan. I assume that this will just carry on almost indefinitely. If this is a bit that gets dragged out for 7 books, so be it. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with him just getting increasingly powerful underwear. Sure, who cares? I enjoy that all of their plans to defeat the bosses make so much sense. I mean, I never feel like, it's an ass pull. Is there like inherent luck to these plans? Sure, of course, right? But I never feel like it's just them being like, oh man, this is this thing that you never heard of, you have no basis of understanding for. We're gonna hit him with this, this Hail Mary one-shot kill technique we have. Do I think that the monster taking that much damage was weird? Yeah, that was a little weird. Getting hit with a Molotov cocktail effectively and taking like a quarter of your health bar. I mean, reasonably speaking, they should have just been able to kill him if they just, played the cards right. But, would have taken a lot of risks. I understand why they did the techniques they did, I think that, reasonably speaking, their plan should have killed this monster. And so, like, a few more tweaks, but I understand why it's written the way it is. So, you know what? It's fair. I'm a big fan of the story so far. He's doing great characterization, good action. I feel like we're rising to an appropriate climax. I don't think this would be like a good standalone book. This is not like a book where I would say like this is a complete story, that if you read this first book, you can stop there if you don't like the series. I feel like this is definitely just like part one of something that's building. They're doing a lot of world building here that I'm a big fan of. But I am super excited to get into the last 20%, see what they wrap it up with. I assume it's going to end on some sort of twist, some twist ending, some thing that where it changes. They're going down to floor 3 next, so I mean, they're going to be changing maybe makeup, species. I'm just excited to see it. All right, we'll get back in with the final part. Hey guys, just finished up the last part of Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 1. This is the spoiler review, so we're just going to talk about some plot points. Him going on the orc show, showing out. Hey, big fan of that. Big fan of the rage bait. I think he does it incredibly well. He's describing this orc as basically like a 20-something, like a red pill guy almost, marketing to teenage boys. So I am a big fan of him rage baiting him. Big fan of it setting up the challenge that almost will definitely happen on the 9th floor. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to Carl putting hands, putting belt to ass on him. Other than that, I mean, it wasn't like an eventful last 20%, I'd say. It definitely did a lot of good work setting up the story for the next few books, I feel. But when it comes to like boss fights, the Gerbil boss fight, I could give or take, Them being kind to the animals was great. Enjoyed that. Them getting Mongo? I think it's Mongo. The Velociraptor. Super hyped for that. Can't wait. Love that we get an addition to the team. It's gonna be pretty consistent. I like the foreshadowing of Agatha being some like super incredible, important spy character-ish thing. They kind of go into talking about what could be happening with like a parasite or something, but it wasn't. It'll be interesting to see how it develops in the story. The last thing we end on was the interview with Odessa. I think it's Odessa. Don't quote me on that. But, she advises them well, from what I understand. I want to learn more about her beef with Mordecai. And they're about to head down to the 3rd floor so they can pick their classes, and pick their race. I think my predictions for the next book, I think they'll both end up keeping a race. Right, Carl likes being a human. Princess Donna loves being a cat. It'll be interesting to see what class they choose. Right, I think that's going to be an exciting part of the next book for sure. Overall, I think this story does a great job of character moments. Even though they don't have what I would consider to be like massive fights often. I do remember some memorable ones, but I'd say they're pretty well dispersed throughout the book. I think they do a good job characterizing our main cast. I feel like they're all very distinct. I like the way that they interact with each other. I don't feel like any of these interactions are forced or unnatural, which is impressive for a guy talking to a cat for most of it. I like that it plays on a lot of human emotions, and how kind of the crowd plays into that too. I love the setup of like the video game. Oh my god, I'm all in on this one. This is like one of the coolest premises, I think, for a book series I've read in a long time. I'm not sold on it as a standalone, you know. If you're trying to test out a book, like if your idea was like, oh, let me test the water, see if I really enjoy the story, you won't get a complete story from this one. You will, however, get a really good setup for what I feel like is going to be a very interesting series. Because it's not a good standalone book, and I can only look at it as it is, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It is very entertaining. It has some great dialogue. It's got good character, good world building. I don't feel like he wastes many words at all, you know? I'm super excited to get into this next book, and I will probably just lay down, honestly, after this and start the next one too. It's like 1 a.m. here, so, I mean, what's 2 a.m., right? Other than that, though, I would definitely recommend this to people getting into fantasy, or anybody that's already into it and just wants like a pretty fun read. I mean, it was a chill read. It was only 440 pages, give or take some. I mean, that's decent sized book for you to get through. It's got a cool cover if you want to gift it to somebody, you know. I think that this is just a classically good book series to get into based on this one book that I'm doing now. So far, 4 out of 5. I will see how the rest of the series goes, and we'll go from there.